welcome back to another episode of Guided Hearts, where we empower, teach, and inspire you to grow deeper in your relationship with Christ. I am your host, Nanofo Katlaho Dibotelo, and today we're diving into a powerful topic, God's grace in your weaknesses, that is finding strength in Him. Okay. So I'm going to narrate this topic through the story of one of the greatest ever, that is Samson. We see his story in the book of Judges. And as we follow it, we realize that he was just like any of us, a man with weaknesses that the Lord chose to use. Samson is a man whose strength was legendary, okay? But unfortunately, it was his weaknesses that ultimately led to his downfall. Today, we're going to talk about how our own unchecked weaknesses can turn into vulnerabilities that the enemy can use to destroy us. So let's take a deep dive into Samson's life and reflect on the lessons we can learn from his story. From the moment Samson was born, I want you to understand this, that even before he was born, an angel visited Samson's mother, and the angel visited both the parents at some point in time to come and announce to them that what they're going to give birth to is not just a normal child. So from the moment Samson was born, he was destined for greatness. He was chosen by God to deliver the Israelites from the oppression of the Philistines. He had divine strength and favor. But as we know, strength alone doesn't guarantee success or protection. Okay? Samson's story is a clear reminder that even when we're blessed with incredible talents, incredible great callings, called for nations, we must also be mindful of our vulnerabilities. For Samson, his weakness wasn't physical, it was emotional. And it was so important for me to try and pinpoint exactly where his weakness is, because many a times we generalize our weakness. We say, oh, I can't do this or I can't do this, but we have to be so specific with it in order to be able to deal with it. Now, Samson's weakness was emotional. He had a deep attraction to women. I think in today's world, they would call it lust, the spirit of lust, even though I'm not sure there's such a thing called the spirit of lust. But anyways, he had a deep attraction to women, particularly those who didn't share his faith. And instead of addressing this weakness, he allowed it to lead him down a path that ultimately cost him everything. What stands out in Samson's story is how the enemy studied him, just like how the devil studies each of us. The enemy doesn't strike randomly. No, he looks for the areas in our lives where we were most vulnerable. And often those vulnerabilities are areas we've either ignored or failed to reflect on ourselves. Think about it, okay? Samson had a destiny. God had anointed him to do great things. He was chosen. Yet he allowed his weakness to cloud his judgment, leading him to betray the very calling that God had given him. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of Samson's story is the betrayal of Delilah, a woman he loved, but whose heart was far from God. This betrayal wasn't just a romantic failure. It was the manifestations of Samson's unaddressed weakness. Understand that before Delilah, there was another woman who betrayed Samson, who took secrets from Samson and gave the Philistines. Okay? Instead of identifying his weakness, identifying where he went wrong, Samson continued on the path because he thought he was mighty, he was strong, he knew it all, he had all the talents, he was loved by God. Whatever he commanded happened. But he didn't heed the wisdom and the warnings, especially from his parents, who had cautioned him against marrying outside his faith. How many of us do not listen to wise counsel in our lives? How many of us Christians do we actually have wise counsel in our lives? Listen, Samson's parents, in their love and wisdom, tried to protect him from destructive paths. But Samson, so consumed by his desires, ignored their counsel. And that's often where we fall, right? We think we know best, or we believe our strength will carry us through. But unchecked weaknesses can become our greatest vulnerabilities. Samson's first wife betrayed him. And it's here that we see the tragic reality. His physical strength couldn't protect him from his internal weaknesses. His refusal to confront his desires, his pride, and his disobedience ultimately led to him being ruined. It was not his physical strength that brought him down. It was in his inability to address the very flaws that made him vulnerable. And it's not just Samson's story. I believe it speaks to each one of us. When we neglect our weaknesses, when we ignore the areas in our lives that need healing or growth, we make it easier for the enemy to take advantage. We are not as strong as we think we are when we refuse to confront the things that truly need attention. If you cannot confront the negative things about you, if you cannot heed to wise counsel about the negative things in your life, then I don't think you are as strong and as great as you think you are. This is a reminder to all of us. If we don't take the time to reflect, to recognize our vulnerabilities, they will eventually define us in ways we never intended. It's essential to confront these weaknesses head on, work through them, and seek God's guidance in those areas. Because if we don't, those very things could be the ones that tear down everything that we've worked for. Everything that we've worked for. How long have you been working to build that business, that relationship? If you don't confront your weakness, it can tear it all down and take it from you just like that. Friends, Samson's life is a cautionary example. He had everything, the strength, the calling, the favor of God, but his unchecked weaknesses led him to a place of defeat. Let this serve as a warning to us to reflect on our own lives. What weaknesses have we been ignoring? What areas have we failed to address, thinking they won't matter? We must be proactive in addressing these things before they consume us. So today, I challenge you, take a moment to reflect. Look at the areas in your life where you may be vulnerable. Seek God's wisdom, just as Samson's parents did for him. Don't ignore the counsel of those around you. Your strength may be impressive, but it is the weaknesses we fail to confront that can lead us to destruction. As we close today's episode, I encourage you to pray and ask God to reveal any weakness you need to work on. It's time for us to strengthen not just our physical abilities, but our hearts, our decisions, and our spirits. We're all works in progress, and with God's guidance, we can overcome anything that seeks to bring us down. Thank you for tuning in to Guided Hearts. I pray that today's message has inspired you to reflect, confront, and grow. Join us next week for another episode. Until then, stay empowered, stay focused, and continue to grow deeper in your relationship with God. God bless you.